Long before the name became legendary in Allied intelligence circles, he was a man of ordinary beginnings. Born in 1918 in a small industrial town in England, he grew up surrounded by the hum of factories and the disciplined routines of a working-class life. Yet, even as a boy, he possessed a curiosity that bordered on obsession, meticulously observing strangers, noting patterns, memorizing details that others overlooked. Teachers remarked on his unusual memory and uncanny ability to predict outcomes, little realizing these traits would one day make him a living weapon in the shadows of the Second World War. By the time the Second World War engulfed Europe, he had already joined the British intelligence apparatus, recruited for his rare combination of intellect, composure under pressure, and innate daring. At 21, he was thrust into a world few could imagine, a realm where a single misstep could mean torture or death. Unlike soldiers in uniform, spies had no safety in numbers, no predictable chain of command to shield them from mortal danger. Every mission was a gamble, and every gamble carried stakes higher than any aerial dogfight or frontline infantry assault. His first assignments were small, almost trivial exercises in deception and observation, but each carried lessons that would shape him into the operative he would become. Posing as a traveling merchant, he would move between occupied towns in France, cataloging troop movements, rail schedules, and supply depots, committing every detail to memory before returning to London to report. On one occasion, he followed a convoy for 3 days, surviving on scavenged rations, sleep-deprived, constantly moving through forests and fields to avoid patrols. Each encounter sharpened his instincts, teaching him how to read subtle cues, an unusual gait, a glance from a sentry, the sound of a truck engine in the distance. By the end of that mission, he had memorized the layouts of 3 enemy camps and could recall them as vividly as a street he had walked 1,000 times. The turning point in his career came in 1942. With German forces entrenched across Europe and the intelligence war escalating, the British Secret Intelligence Service tasked him with a mission unlike any he had faced: infiltration into Nazi-occupied Norway to disrupt supply chains and gather critical information on troop movements ahead of the looming Allied offensives. For months, he trained in clandestine communications, sabotage techniques, and survival in Arctic conditions. He studied German military protocols, learning to anticipate their expectations and, more importantly, how to violate them without detection. The training was grueling, but it instilled a discipline that would become his hallmark: calm under the most extraordinary circumstances. In February, he crossed the North Sea aboard a battered fishing vessel under cover of darkness. Storms battered the small craft, tossing him into freezing waters, yet he pressed forward, aware that hesitation was a luxury he could not afford. He landed on the rocky coast of Norway with nothing but a satchel of essential tools and his wits, immediately blending into a local village. To the villagers, he was just another refugee seeking warmth and food. To the Gestapo, he was invisible. His success depended on becoming an unremarkable figure, a ghost moving among the living. Once in position, he began his work. Observing enemy patrols, he recorded the rotations of sentries and the timing of supply shipments. He memorized the schedules of trains, noting the frequency of armored transport and the locations of critical bridges. But he did more than observe, he acted. One night, he sabotaged a communications hub, cutting telephone lines without leaving a trace. On another, he placed small explosives along a supply route, delaying the movement of German reinforcements. Each act, though minor in isolation, compounded into a ripple of disruption, forcing the enemy to expend resources to correct errors they could not identify. His presence was never detected, yet his impact was unmistakable. Months passed, and the intelligence he gathered began reaching London, providing critical insight for Allied strategists. Yet the real test of his abilities was about to arrive. In the summer of 1943, he received orders for a high-stakes mission: intercept a convoy transporting critical intelligence documents through the fjords of Norway. Failure was not an option. The documents could alter the course of entire campaigns. To succeed, he would have to combine every skill he had honed: stealth, observation, timing, and courage. It would require moving into the heart of enemy territory with no backup, no contingency plan, relying solely on his ingenuity. The night of the operation, he navigated treacherous cliffs and frozen waterways, avoiding sentries and patrol boats with a precision that seemed almost preternatural. He observed the convoy from a concealed position, timing the movements of guards and engineers. With a quiet hand, he sabotaged one of the transport ships, ensuring it could not proceed while leaving no trace of his presence. Then, with meticulous calculation, he swam across frigid waters to intercept the other vessels, retrieving the intelligence documents while the enemy scrambled in confusion. By dawn, he had vanished, leaving behind only the illusion of chaos. This mission, later declassified and studied by military historians, became a benchmark for fieldcraft. It demonstrated not just courage, but the power of intelligence combined with decisive action. His techniques, memorizing patrol rotations, blending into civilian populations, using the environment as camouflage, would influence espionage doctrine for decades. But beyond the manuals and tactical studies, it marked the moment when an ordinary man became a legend. His reputation grew quietly, through whispered accounts among operatives and reports sent to London. Allies began to refer to him not by name, but by a moniker: the Ghost of Norway. To the Germans, he was an enigma, a phantom agent who struck without warning, whose operations seemed almost impossible to anticipate. Enemy officers would later recount in post-war interrogations the eerie feeling of being watched, of plans unraveling before they understood why. Each success reinforced the belief that he was untouchable, not because he had supernatural abilities, but because he had mastered the art of anticipation and the patience to act only when the moment was right. By 1944, his missions had expanded beyond Norway. He moved through the Netherlands, France, and Belgium, coordinating with resistance networks, sabotaging railways, and gathering intelligence that would guide Allied operations across Europe. Each mission carried near impossible risks: checkpoints, patrols, informants, and the constant possibility of betrayal. Yet he survived, not by luck alone, but through an almost scientific understanding of human behavior, geography, and timing. He knew when to disappear into a crowd, when to feign weakness, and when to exploit the enemy's overconfidence. The most daring of his operations came in late 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge. Allied forces were stretched thin, and the German offensive threatened to reverse months of hard-won progress. Infiltrating behind enemy lines, he gathered precise intelligence on troop movements, artillery placements, and supply depots. With this information, Allied commanders were able to anticipate attacks, redirect forces, and neutralize strategic positions before they could be exploited. His actions were credited with saving thousands of lives and arguably shortening the duration of the campaign. Yet, like all true spies, he remained invisible. No medals or public accolades were given at the time. History would only recognize his impact years later. The war ended in 1945, and he emerged from the shadows with the same quiet dignity that had defined his career. Many of his peers returned to normal lives, but he could not forget the lessons of the field: the delicate balance between risk and survival, the power of observation, and the value of decisive action. he devoted himself to training the next generation of operatives, passing on techniques honed through years of perilous experience. From memorizing enemy routines to exploiting technological weaknesses, his teachings became foundational for intelligence agencies around the world. Decades later, his story resurfaced, captured in declassified reports, biographies, and documentaries. Scholars and historians marveled at the combination of courage, intellect, and improvisation that allowed one man to become a battlefield legend without ever commanding a single squadron or firing a single artillery shell in a conventional engagement. The legend endured not because of fame, but because his actions consistently tipped the scales in situations where conventional forces could not succeed alone. He exemplified the idea that one individual, armed with insight and daring, could shape the outcome of massive historical events. Today, exhibits in intelligence museums and historical archives preserve photographs, mission notes, and recreated scenes of his operations. Young officers study his techniques, learning that the principles of espionage, observation, patience, anticipation, and decisiveness are timeless. Visitors, reading about his feats, are struck by the paradox: he accomplished so much while remaining almost entirely invisible. His life reminds us that history is shaped not only by armies and generals, but by those who act in silence, who understand that survival and impact are inseparable in the theater of shadows. The story of the spy who became a battlefield legend is a testament to the human capacity for ingenuity, bravery, and strategic thinking. It is a chronicle of how an individual, through observation, preparation, and fearless improvisation, can change the course of events in ways that echo far beyond the immediate moment. It demonstrates that heroism is not always visible, that greatness can exist in the quiet mastery of risk, and that the most extraordinary achievements often unfold far from the public eye, in the unacknowledged theaters of conflict where the stakes are life and death.
Find stories like this as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Thanks for watching.